Hi, log management with Python. So in this video, we're going to take a look at using Python logging module to persist information. So you saw from the last video that you could query the device information via SNMP or API call and normalize them into a dictionary. Obviously, at that point, you could put it into a database, or you could start graphing or whatnot that essentially fits your schema. But in this case, let's use the Python logging module to persist that information and into a log format so you could perhaps ingest it later on. We're also going to look at using a Python script to real-time monitoring the log file. So as the file is being written in, that you want to read those lines line by line and perhaps use a regular expression or whatnot to grab the event that you want, and using the notification formats that we're going to talk later on to notify you if there's an interesting event that you want to be notified of. And let's look at the various log options, because logs has been going around for a long time, and it's not just for network devices, it's for basically everything: servers, IoT devices, and networking devices, of course. So that let's look at various log options that you could use, or log management options that you could have in today's world. And let's briefly look at the Logstash and the Elk stack, because I think that is really, in my personal opinion, a very well integrated stack that's including ingestion, filtering, and modification, mucking of that data into interesting format, as well as added new information to the data set, as well as visualizing using Kibana. So let's take a look at the log management demonstration. The first script that we're going to look at is just basically built on what we've done before with the NX API query. This should look very similar to you, except we're importing the logging module that we're going to use. And here that we define that we're going to write to a nexus.log file, as well as the timing format. We're going to have the host and process variable that we're going to use later on. From the line 12 to pretty much toward the end, there's nothing new except that instead of printing it out, we're going to write it to log. And this is the really, like 35 to 37 you should have already seen, and 38 essentially write to that log file. So, and this is, obviously putting into a loop that it's just keep on writing to that file. So if we could just execute this and the NX API, and of course this is a file, and sorry I didn't point out before, but it was a loop that keeps going on every second. So let's give it some time. And now I've interrupted, and now you can see there's a new Nexus log. And let's just look at the last 10 lines of that Nexus log. So essentially it's querying, and you can see this is a standard log format with the timestamp, the host name, as well as the information that we wanted. And so if we were to execute that file, and here's the Python script. It's a very simple script that we could keep querying that log file and look at the interesting event, look at the line that we're querying in, and later on we could use the regular expression to parse out the interesting bits and notify us when there's a information that we want to be notified of. So let's execute this. And for now, I'm just printing it out. So as you can see that I'm just tailing in that event. And let's go to the Nexus device, and let's look at the show IP brief, and let's just shut down Ethernet 2.1. So we're shutting it down, and we could see that now it's Ethernet 2.1 is down in this case. Now let's no shut it, and now it's becoming back up. So that's just proving that this script actually works. It's monitoring, it's writing to the log file in real time, and we could use another script to query that in real time. On the screen, you could see a page that's put together by Full Stack Python by my friend Matt Mackay that lists out all the logging options, such as your log aggregators, your open source projects that you could use for your log aggregation. My particular favorite is Logstash, as we'll go over in a bit, and some of the hosted logging services that you could use. Splunk is obviously very popular, as well as Loggly. As mentioned before, Logstash is my favorite out of all the open source projects, because I think it's a very integrated stack called the Elk for using Logstash for log ingestions and Elasticsearch for indexing and quick query, as well as using Kibana as the front end for you to query the information that you already put in. Unfortunately, it's such a big topic, and books and other classes have been written to illustrate, to explain the whole stack. So I'm just going to quickly show you the Logstash file that it's more from a working file that I've used before. And this is basically, I've taken out some of the more sensitive information, but it's essentially what it is that, your Logstash file will consist of 3 sections. One would be the input section where you just specify which log file that you want to ingest. And this could very well be your Nexus log that we've been writing to. And you have a filter section specified by the curly brackets that you could, actually add more information to it, or you could match a particular type and change the information that you needed before you put it into the Elasticsearch. And in here, a very popular option is just to add the GeoIP information so that you could visualize this particular IP is, say, from United States or from Japan or whatnot. In the output section, that was the third part of the Logstash configuration, is that I wanted to point out that right now, the Amazon AWS, by the time you hear this, hopefully it hasn't changed, but AWS actually has a free tier for you to use. So essentially, you could set up your environment where you just have the Logstash installed, ingest the log file, and then you offload the Elasticsearch and the Kibana portion to Amazon AWS. And here's the exact lines that you need to put in to dump that information to Amazon hosted Elasticsearch. And if you're wondering, the authorization would be your public IP address. So on Amazon account that you want to specify which IP address you're allowed to ingest from on your hosted instance. So in this video, we look at the logging module from Python, as well as using a small Python script to do real-time monitoring of that particular log file. And we quickly went over some of the logging resources, your hosted log services, or your open source projects that's log related, as well as we did a quick look on the Elk stack. And in the next video, let's take a look at network monitoring with Cacti, or more in particular, using Python to integrate monitoring with Cacti.